Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the New Horizon, watching the stars through the main window. His ship had been traveling for 3 months, looking for new places to mine precious metals. The crew of 200 people worked hard, every day, searching the empty space around the Kepler 442 system. "Captain, we found something strange," called Dr. Lisa Grant from her science station. She was the ship's chief science officer, a smart woman who had spent years studying alien technology. Her voice carried excitement that made everyone on the bridge look up from their work. Jake walked over to her station. "What do you see, Lisa?" "Look at this." She pointed to her screen, which showed a large structure floating in space. It was dark and broken, like a giant building that had been damaged long ago. It's about 50 kilometers long and made of materials we don't recognize. The computer says it's very old, maybe thousands of years. Commander Ryan Clark, the ship's security chief, moved closer to look. He was a tough man who always worried about danger. "Could it be a trap? Maybe someone put it there to catch ships like ours." Lisa shook her head. "The scans show no power signals. It looks completely dead. But Captain, the metal it's made from is unlike anything in our databases. If we could study it, we might learn new ways to build stronger ships." Jake thought for a moment. Finding new technology could help humanity grow stronger in space. But Ryan was right to be careful. Space was full of dangers they didn't understand yet. "Set course for the structure," Jake decided. "But keep our weapons ready and shields up. Lisa, I want full scans of everything around us." The New Horizon moved slowly toward the ancient structure. As they got closer, the crew could see it better. It looked like a massive space station, but the design was strange. Instead of the smooth lines humans used, this structure had sharp angles and curves that hurt to look at. "Captain, I'm reading some kind of writing on the hull," reported Tony Martinez, the ship's communications officer. "The computer can't translate it, but it looks like symbols cut deep into the metal." Lisa worked at her station, running scan after scan. "The internal structure is mostly empty. There might be some rooms we could explore, but I can't tell if the air inside is safe to breathe." Jake was about to give orders for an exploration team when every alarm on the ship started ringing at once. Red lights flashed on every wall, and the crew rushed to their emergency positions. "Captain!" shouted Beth Collins from the sensor station. "Multiple ships are appearing around us. They just came out of nowhere." On the main screen, massive ships began to show themselves. They had been invisible before, hiding with technology far better than anything humans had. The alien vessels were huge, each one 3 times the size of the New Horizon. Their hulls were dark green and covered with sharp spikes. They looked like giant insects made of metal and death. "Count them," Jake ordered, his voice staying calm even though his heart was beating fast. 12 ships, Captain, all bigger than ours. They're surrounding us in a perfect circle." Beth's hands shook as she read her instruments. "Their weapons are pointed right at us." One of the alien ships moved closer. A new voice came through the ship's communication system, speaking in perfect English but with a cold, harsh tone that made everyone shiver. "Human vessel, you will listen and obey. I am War Commander Thexale of the Zephyrian Collective. You have entered space that belongs to us. You will explain why you dare to touch what is ours." Jake stepped forward even though he wanted to run. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human ship New Horizon. We didn't know this area belonged to anyone. We're explorers looking for resources to help our people." A sound like angry insects came through the speakers, which Jake guessed was alien laughter. "Humans, we have heard of your kind, small creatures who spread through space like a disease. You take what does not belong to you and call it exploration." The main screen changed to show the inside of the alien ship. The creature speaking was tall and thin, covered in green shell-like skin. Its forearms ended in sharp claws, and its eyes were large and black. When it spoke, Jake could see rows of pointed teeth. "I will tell you something, human captain. The Zephyrian Collective has ruled this part of space for 3,000 years. We have destroyed civilizations older and stronger than yours. We have turned entire worlds into dust when their people would not obey us. Dr. Grant whispered to Jake. I'm getting readings on their ships. The energy patterns are incredible. Their technology is far ahead of ours. War Commander Thexal seemed to hear her somehow. Yes, human. Your primitive sensors can barely understand what they see. Our ships carry the power to crack planets. Our weapons can turn your stars cold. And now I will show you. On the screen, one of the alien ships turned toward a human cargo freighter that had been following the New Horizon. The freighter was unmanned, carrying only metal ore back to human space. Watch carefully, humans. See what happens to those who do not respect the collective. A beam of pure energy shot from the alien ship. It hit the freighter, and the entire vessel simply vanished. No explosion, no fire, no pieces left behind. One moment the ship was there, and the next moment there was only empty space. The bridge of the New Horizon became very quiet. Everyone understood what they had just seen. These aliens could destroy them without any effort at all. Now you begin to understand, said Thexal. But I am not without mercy. The collective has decided to give humanity a choice. You will have 30 of your days to withdraw from all space beyond your home system. Take your colonies, take your ships, take your dreams of expansion, and go back to where you came from. Jake felt anger rising in his chest. Those colonies have millions of people. They've built homes, farms, entire cities. You can't just tell them to leave everything behind. I can and I do. If humanity does not obey, we will do to your worlds what we just did to your ship. Every human colony will burn. Every human ship will become dust. Every human life will end. This is not a negotiation, Captain. This is a warning. The alien ships began to move away, but Thexal's voice continued. 30 days, humans. Use them wisely. Think about your families, your children, your future. The collective has never been defeated. We have never shown mercy twice. Choose correctly. The communication ended, and the alien ships vanished as suddenly as they had appeared. The New Horizon was alone again with the ancient structure, but everything had changed. Jake looked around his bridge at his crew. They all had the same expression of shock and fear. Dr. Grant was still staring at her instruments, trying to understand the readings from the alien ships. Commander Clark was checking their weapons, even though everyone knew human weapons would be useless against such power. Captain, said Tony Martinez quietly, what do we do now? Jake took a deep breath. He thought about the colonies, about Earth, about all the humans living peacefully in space. Then he thought about the alien's cold voice and the way the freighter had simply disappeared. We go home, he said finally. We take everything we learned here and we warn everyone. Humanity needs to know what's coming. As the New Horizon turned toward home, Dr. Grant continued studying the data from their encounter. She had managed to scan the alien ships during their meeting, and something in the readings made her think. The aliens were powerful, yes, but their technology had patterns. And patterns could be understood, maybe even beaten. The trip back to human space would take weeks, but Lisa knew she would spend every moment of that time analyzing what she had learned. The aliens thought humans were weak and would run away. They were about to learn their first lesson about humanity. Humans didn't run. They fought back. The emergency meeting room in Geneva was full of angry voices. President Elena Rodriguez sat at the head of the long table, listening to the arguments that had been going on for 3 hours. The leaders of every human colony were talking at the same time, and nobody seemed to agree on anything. We should evacuate immediately, said Governor Hayes from the Mars colony. My people have families, children. I won't let them die for pride. Run away and go where? Shouted Admiral Marcus Webb, hitting the table with his fist. Earth can't hold 15 billion extra people. The colonies are our future. If we abandon them now, humanity will never recover. General Casey Thompson stood up from her chair. She was a tall woman with gray hair and scars on her face from the border wars. "The Admiral is right. We retreat now, and these aliens will know they can push us around forever. Next time, they'll demand more, until we have nothing left." President Rodriguez raised her hand, and slowly the room became quiet. She had been awake for 2 days straight, reading reports and trying to find a solution that would keep humanity alive. "Dr. Grant, tell us what you learned from the alien ships." Lisa Grant had arrived on Earth the day before, bringing all the data from their encounter. She looked tired but excited, like a scientist who had discovered something important. The binge. "Zephyrian ships are incredibly advanced, but they're not perfect. I found 3 major weaknesses in their technology." She activated the holographic display in the center of the room. "First, their shields operate on a specific frequency. They pulse every 12 seconds to refresh their power. During those pulses, there's a tiny window where they're vulnerable." The military leaders in the room leaned forward, paying attention. "Second, their main weapons draw huge amounts of power from crystalline cores in their engine sections. If we could disrupt those cores, their weapons would fail. Third, and most interesting, their ships are designed to fight civilizations that use similar technology to theirs. They've never faced opponents who think differently." General Thompson smiled for the first time in days. "What do you mean, think differently? They expect big fleets fighting big fleets, ship against ship, weapon against weapon. They don't understand irregular warfare, hit-and-run tactics, or using civilian ships in combat roles. Their entire battle doctrine is based on overwhelming power used in traditional ways." Admiral Webb was studying the holographic displays. "How long would it take to modify our weapons to exploit these weaknesses?" "With full industrial support, maybe 6 months. But we only have 30 days before their deadline." The room fell silent. 6 months was too long. In 30 days, the aliens would return and humanity had to have an answer. "What if we don't fight them directly?" asked Tony Martinez, who had come to Earth with Dr. Grant. "What if we make them think we're retreating while we actually prepare?" President Rodriguez looked at him. "Explain." "We publicly announce that we're considering their demands. We start evacuating the outer colonies, make it look like we're scared. Meanwhile, we secretly prepare defenses and weapons. When they come back, we'll be ready." "That's lying to our own people," said Governor Hayes. "The colonists have a right to know what's really happening." General Thompson shook her head. "No, it's smart. We can't evacuate 15 billion people in 30 days anyway. But we can move the most vulnerable, especially children, while making it look like we're giving up." While the leaders argued, something else was happening across human space. The news of the alien threat had spread, and ordinary people were not reacting the way the aliens expected. On Mars, Tony's brother Sam Martinez was working in the big mining factories. When he heard about the threat, he didn't run away. Instead, he started talking to other workers about turning their mining equipment into weapons. The huge machines that could cut through solid rock could also cut through alien ships. In the asteroid belt, freighter pilot Sam Hughes called a meeting of all the independent haulers. These were tough people who spent their lives moving cargo between dangerous places. When Sam told them about the aliens, they didn't talk about hiding. They talked about fighting. "I've got 50 ships in my group," said Captain Mary Foster, who ran supplies to the outer mining stations. "They're not military vessels, but they're fast and hard to track. If we fill them with explosives, we could do some damage." On Europa Station, communications expert Beth Collins was doing something completely different. She was studying every piece of data about the alien encounter, looking for patterns in their language and behavior. Beth had grown up poor in the slums of Detroit, learning to read people's emotions to survive. Now she used those same skills to understand aliens. What she found made her excited and scared at the same time. "The aliens are afraid," she told her supervisor. "Not of our weapons or our ships, but of something else. The way their commander spoke, the the words he chose, the timing of his pauses. He's trying to convince himself as much as us. Afraid of what? I think they've never faced a species that actually fights back. Every civilization they've conquered probably surrendered after the first demonstration of power. But humans don't work that way. Back on Earth, the government meeting was finally reaching a decision. President Rodriguez had listened to everyone, considered all the options, and made her choice. "We're not abandoning our colonies," she announced. "But we're also not going to fight a traditional war we can't win. Dr. Grant, I'm giving you unlimited resources to develop those weapon modifications. Admiral Webb, start preparing our fleets, but think unconventionally. General Thompson, coordinate with the colonial militias and civilian groups." She paused and looked around the room. "I want to be very clear about something. The aliens think we're a weak species that will run away when threatened. They're about to learn that threatening humanity is the worst mistake they could make." Over the next few weeks, human space became incredibly busy. The official news said that humanity was considering the alien demands. But the reality was different. Every ship, every factory, every person was preparing for war. Dr. Grant worked with teams of scientists and engineers, racing to understand alien technology and develop countermeasures. They tested her theories on captured alien materials from old archaeological sites, trying to find ways to disrupt the crystal cores that powered alien ships. Admiral Webb reorganized the human fleet completely. Instead of big ships fighting in formation, he created small, fast attack groups that could hit targets and disappear. He also began training civilian pilots to use their ships in combat, turning cargo haulers and mining vessels into an irregular navy. General Thompson went further. She contacted every colonial militia, every security force, every group of people who knew how to fight. Her message was simple: the aliens expect us to fight like they do, with honor and tradition. We're going to fight like humans, with cunning and determination. The most important work was being done by people like Beth Collins, who were learning to understand the enemy's mind. The more she studied Zephyrian communications and behavior, the more she realized their greatest weakness. "They've been dominant for so long that they can't imagine losing," she reported to her superiors. "Every battle they've fought for the last 1,000 years has ended the same way. Their enemies see their power and surrender. They have no experience with opponents who get stronger when threatened." As the 30-day deadline approached, humanity was as ready as it could be. Not ready to win a straight fight, but ready to show the aliens that humans were nothing like the species they had conquered before. The aliens had made their first mistake when they threatened humanity instead of trying to negotiate. They were about to make their second mistake by underestimating what humans could do when their survival was at stake. President Rodriguez gave one final speech to the human colonies. She didn't promise victory because she couldn't, but she promised something else. Whatever happens in the coming days, the aliens will learn that humanity doesn't surrender. We adapt, we survive, and we fight back. They wanted to teach us fear. Instead, they're about to learn what it means to face a species that has nothing left to lose. In space around the colonies, human ships waited in hiding. In secret bases, new weapons powered up for the first time. In communication centers, humans prepared to fight a war unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. The aliens were coming back, expecting to find a defeated enemy ready to surrender. Instead, they would find humanity ready to show them what happened when you threatened the wrong species. War Commander Thexal stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at the human colony world below. Proxima Centauri B was a beautiful planet, with blue oceans and green continents. 2.5 million humans lived there in cities that sparkled, like jewels in the sunlight. "Status report," he commanded in the clicking language of the Zephyrians. 50 ships in perfect formation, War Commander. All weapons ready. The humans have not responded to our ultimatum," reported his second-in-command, a younger warrior named Clickstar. Thexal felt satisfied. The humans had been given 30 days to withdraw from all their colonies, but they were still here. Now he would teach them the price of defying the collective. "Begin the attack. Target their largest city first. One shot should be enough to make the rest surrender. War Commander. Our scouts report some human ships in the area. Should we eliminate them first? Thexal looked at the tactical display. There were maybe 20 human vessels scattered around the planet, mostly small cargo ships and mining vessels. A few looked like military ships, but they were tiny compared to Zephyrian warships. Leave them. Let them watch what happens when someone defies us. After we destroy the city, they'll spread the word to other human worlds. What Thexal didn't know was that Commodore Jake Morrison was watching him from the bridge of a converted cargo hauler called the Fighting Spirit. Jake had been promoted after his encounter with the aliens, and now he commanded the Proxima Defense Force, a mixed group of military and civilian ships. All ships. This is Morrison. They're moving into attack position. Remember the plan? Wait for my signal. Dr. Lisa Grant was aboard the Fighting Spirit, watching her instruments carefully. The modifications to their weapons had been installed just 3 days ago, and they had never been tested in real combat. Jake, I'm reading the same energy patterns as before. Their shields are cycling every 12 seconds, just like I predicted. Good. Tony, are you picking up their communications? Tony Martinez, now the fleet's communications specialist, nodded. They're talking in their own language, but the computer is starting to translate. They sound very confident, sir. They think this will be easy. The first Zephyrian ship fired its main weapon at the human city of New Geneva. The energy beam struck the city's shield generators and stopped. The humans had managed to create shields strong enough to absorb the attack, at least for a while. On the Zephyrian flagship, Clickstar looked confused. War Commander, they're defensive. Systems are still active. That shot should have destroyed everything within 50 kilometers. Thexal felt a touch of concern, but pushed it away. Increase power. Use 3 ships this time. 3 Zephyrian vessels fired together, and the human city shields flickered and began to fail. But the delay had given Jake the time he needed. All ships execute dragon flight pattern. Remember what Dr. Grant taught us? Hit them during their shield pulse, then get out fast. The human ships moved in ways the Zephyrians had never seen before. Instead of flying in neat formations like proper warships, they darted and weaved like insects, never staying in one place long enough to be targeted effectively. The Fighting Spirit, loaded with Dr. Grant's experimental weapons, struck first. Jake waited until his sensors showed the enemy shield pulse, then fired everything he had. The modified plasma cannon punched through the Zephyrian ship's defenses and tore a hole in its hull. "Direct hit!" shouted Lisa. "Their shields are down!" For 8 more seconds, 2 more human ships, both converted mining vessels, followed up the attack. Their industrial cutting lasers, designed to slice through asteroids, carved deep wounds in the alien ship's armor. Thexal watched in shock as one of his ships began to spin out of control, venting atmosphere and debris. How is this possible? These are primitive humans with inferior weapons. War Commander. They seem to know exactly when our shields are vulnerable. And their attack patterns. I've never seen anything like this. The battle was far from over. The humans had drawn first. Blood. But they were still outnumbered and outgunned. As the Zephyrians recovered from their surprise, they began to fight back with the fury of a proud species that had never been hurt before. Alien energy beams lashed out at the human ships. The cargo hauler New Promise took a direct hit and exploded, killing all 30 crew members instantly. The mining ship Rock Crusher lost its engines and began to drift helplessly. But something strange was happening. Instead of running away when their ships were destroyed, the humans seemed to get more determined. When the Rock Crusher's engines failed, its crew didn't try to escape. Instead, they aimed their ship at the nearest Zephyrian vessel and set their cargo of mining explosives to detonate on impact. The explosion was enormous, visible from space as a brief new sun. When the light faded, both ships were gone. But the humans had traded 1 damaged mining ship for a full Zephyrian cruiser. "War Commander," said Clickstar, his voice shaking slightly. "The humans are using suicide attacks. They're ramming our Ships with explosive-filled vessels. This was completely outside Zephyrian experience. In 3,000 years of conquest, no enemy had ever been willing to die just to damage their ships. Civilized species negotiated when they were beaten. They didn't throw away lives in desperate attacks. The battle continued for 3 hours. The humans lost ship after ship, but they never stopped fighting. Every time a human vessel was destroyed, the remaining ships seemed to fight harder. It was like cutting the heads off a beast that grew stronger with each wound. Sam Hughes, flying his freighter the Star Runner, had already rammed 2 Zephyrian ships and somehow survived both impacts. His ship was held together with emergency, patches, and determination, but he kept fighting. This is Hughes to all ships. I've got one more run left in me. Anyone want to join me for a dance with the big ugly one in the center? 3 more human ships answered his call. They formed up around the Star Runner and flew straight at Thexal's flagship, ignoring the energy beams that tore through space around them. Dr. Grant watched the attack from the fighting spirit and realized something that made her heart race with excitement. Jake, look at their formation. The Zephyrians are pulling back. They're actually afraid. It was true. The alien ships were no longer advancing on the human colony. Instead, they were forming defensive positions, trying to protect themselves from the suicidal human attacks. Thexal was experiencing something he had never felt before: doubt. His ships were winning the battle, but at a cost he had never imagined. He had started the day with 50 ships. Now he had 38, and several of those were badly damaged. War Commander, perhaps we should withdraw and return with more ships, suggested Clickstar. No! Thexal's voice was sharp with anger, but underneath was fear. We cannot show weakness to these creatures. If word spreads that humans made us retreat, other species might think they can resist us too. But the damage was already done. Every Zephyrian warrior on every ship had seen their seemingly invincible fleet hurt by an enemy they had considered inferior. The humans weren't fighting like any civilized species should. They were fighting like cornered animals, and cornered animals were dangerous. The battle finally ended when the human colony's reinforcements arrived. Admiral Webb had sent every ship he could spare, and they struck the Zephyrian fleet from behind, while the aliens were focused on the suicidal human attacks. Faced with enemies on 2 sides and ships that refused to die properly, Thexal made the hardest decision of his military career. All ships withdraw to safe distance. Maintain defensive formation. As the Zephyrian fleet pulled back, the surviving human ships regrouped around their colony. They had lost 15 ships and over 400 crew members, but Proxima Centauri was still free. More importantly, they had captured 3 damaged Zephyrian vessels that had been abandoned by their crews. Dr. Grant was already making plans to study every piece of technology on those ships. Jake Morrison, now commanding only 12 ships instead of the 25 he had started with, opened a communication channel to the entire fleet. All ships, this is Morrison. Today we proved something important. We proved that humans don't surrender and we don't give up. The aliens came here expecting an easy victory. Instead, they learned that threatening humanity comes with a price. His flagship, Thexal, listened to the human communication with growing unease. The humans were celebrating, even though they had lost more ships than his forces. They acted like they had won a great victory when any rational species would be mourning their dead. Clickstar, prepare a report for the High Command. Tell them that the humans are more dangerous than we thought. Recommend that we return with a larger fleet. But as his ship left the Proxima system, Thexal couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had changed. For 3,000 years, the collective had conquered through overwhelming force and the fear it created. Today, for the first time, they had encountered a species that became stronger when threatened. The humans had lost the battle by any reasonable measure, but somehow it felt like the Zephyrians had lost something more important. They had lost The certainty that they were invincible, and once that doubt began, it would spread through their empire like a poison. Dr. Grant was already at work on the captured alien ships, her teams crawling through every compartment and analyzing every system. The aliens had made a critical mistake by leaving their T6 months after the Battle of Proxima Centauri. The HFY galaxy had become a very different place. The war between humanity and the Zephyrian Collective was spreading across dozens of star systems, and both sides were learning hard lessons about their enemies. Admiral Marcus Webb stood in the command center of the new military base on Titan, looking at a holographic map that showed the current war situation. Red dots marked Zephyrian positions, blue dots showed human forces, and yellow areas indicated contested space where battles were happening every day. "Status report, General Thompson," he said to the woman standing beside him. Casey Thompson had aged 5 years and 6 months, but her eyes were sharper than ever. "We've lost 8 more colony worlds, but we've also captured 12 Zephyrian outposts. More importantly, we've disrupted their supply lines in the Vega sector." Casualties? High on both sides. "But Marcus, you need to see the intelligence reports." From Beth Collins. "She's discovered something that could change everything." Beth Collins had become the director of the new Alien Psychology Division, a job that didn't exist before the war started. Her team studied captured Zephyrian communications and tried to understand how the enemy thought. "Admiral, we've been intercepting their military communications for 3 months now," Beth explained as she activated her displays. "The Zephyrians are having serious problems they never expected." The hologram showed intercepted alien messages, translated into English by computers that had learned to understand Zephyrian language patterns. Their military commanders are reporting something they call fighting fatigue among their troops. For 3,000 years, Zephyrian warriors have fought enemies that surrendered after 1 or 2 battles. Now they're facing humans who keep fighting no matter how many times they're beaten. Admiral Webb leaned forward, interested. "What does that mean for us?" "It means their soldiers are scared, Admiral. Listen to this communication from one of their ship captains." Beth played a recording of alien voices, speaking in their clicking language, with English subtitles appearing below. "High Command, this is Captain Vrixall of the cruiser Painbringer. We have been fighting the same human fleet for 18 days. Every time we defeat them, they return with new ships. Yesterday, a damaged human vessel rammed our destroyer rather than surrender. My crew is beginning to question whether these creatures are truly intelligent or simply insane." Beth stopped the recording. "That's the key, Admiral. They think we're insane because we don't fight the way civilized species are supposed to fight." While Beth was explaining alien psychology, Dr. Lisa Grant was working in the research labs deep inside Titan's ice. The captured Zephyrian ships had provided her with technology that was centuries ahead of human science, but she was finding ways to use it against its creators. "Tony, come look at this," she called to Tony Martinez, who had become her chief assistant in studying alien technology. Tony walked over to her workstation, where she was examining a piece of crystal that glowed with internal light. "What am I looking at, Lisa?" "This is a power core from a Zephyrian ship. It stores enough energy to power a human city for a year. But watch what happens when I expose it to this frequency." She activated a device that produced a high-pitched sound. The crystal's glow began to flicker, then suddenly went dark. "The entire power system shuts down," Lisa explained excitedly. "If we can build weapons that produce this frequency, we can disable their ships without destroying them. We could capture entire fleets." Tony grinned. "The aliens gave us the tools to beat them when they left those ships behind." "Better than that. I've been studying their ship designs, and I think I know how to build hybrid vessels, human engineering combined with alien technology, but designed to human specifications." While the scientists worked on new technology, the war itself was changing in ways the Zephyrians never expected. General Thompson had completely abandoned traditional military tactics, instead creating a new kind of warfare that used human creativity. and stubbornness. Sam Hughes, the freighter pilot who had survived 2 ramming attacks at Proxima, was now commanding a fleet of modified civilian ships called the Ghost Squadron. These vessels looked like ordinary cargo haulers, but they were actually fast attack ships designed to hit enemy supply lines and disappear before the Zephyrians could respond. "Target acquired," Sam reported over the radio as his squadron approached. A Zephyrian supply convoy. 12 transport ships with 4 escort cruisers. Classic formation, just like the manual says they should use. The Zephyrians had written extensive manuals about proper military tactics, and they followed them exactly. This made them predictable, which was exactly what Sam was counting on. Remember, people, we're not trying to win a fair fight. We hit the escorts first, grab what supplies we can, and run. If anyone gets in trouble, don't try to be a hero. The Ghost Squadron struck like lightning. Their ships, powered by hybrid human-alien engines, were faster than anything the Zephyrians had. The attack lasted only 10 minutes, but when it was over, all 4 escort ships were disabled and half the supply convoy was captured. More importantly, the attack was recorded and broadcast across human space. Every colony, every ship, every human could watch their people striking back at the aliens who had threatened them. This was another thing the Zephyrians didn't understand. Humans used their victories as propaganda, inspiring more people to join the fight. Every successful attack brought more volunteers, more resources, more determination to keep fighting. Tony's brother Sam Martinez had become the head of something called the Rapid Manufacturing Initiative. Working from hidden factories and asteroid fields, his teams were building warships faster than the Zephyrians thought possible. "The key is modular construction," Sam explained to a group of factory supervisors. "We don't build each ship from scratch. We build standard sections that can be combined in different ways. A cargo section plus an engine section plus a weapon section equals a fighting ship." The production numbers were staggering. Human factories that had been building mining equipment and colony supplies were now producing warships. Every month, hundreds of new vessels joined the human fleet. But the most important change was happening in the minds of both species. The Zephyrians had started the war expecting quick victory against a weak enemy. Instead, they were fighting a species that seemed to get stronger every time it was hurt. War Commander Thexal had been promoted to Fleet Commander after his victory at Proxima Centauri, but he knew the truth. His forces were winning individual battles but losing the war. Every day brought reports of new human attacks, new human weapons, new human tactics. "High Command, this is Fleet Commander Thexal," he said into his communication device. "I request immediate reinforcement of 50 additional ships and authorization to use planet-killer weapons against human worlds." The response came from the Zephyrian High Council itself, transmitted across space with the authority of 3,000 years of unchallenged rule. "Fleet Commander, the Council is concerned about the duration of this conflict. Previous conquests have taken weeks, not months. Explain the delay." Thexal felt his career hanging in the balance. "High Command, the humans are unlike any species we have previously encountered. They do not surrender when defeated. They do not negotiate when threatened. They adapt their tactics faster than we can counter them." "Are you telling the Council that a primitive species is superior to the collective?" "No, High Command. I am telling you that they are different. They fight not for honor or territory, but for survival. And creatures fighting for survival are dangerous beyond measure." The communication ended, leaving Thexal staring at the tactical displays showing dozens of ongoing battles across human space. His forces were spread thin, fighting an enemy that seemed to be everywhere at once. What he didn't know was that Beth Collins had intercepted his transmission. Within hours, copies were being broadcast to every human ship and colony, translated into clear English. "People of humanity," said President Rodriguez in a special broadcast, "you've just heard the enemy's own commander admit that we're different from everyone they've conquered before. They expected us to surrender. Instead, we're showing them what happens when you threaten the wrong species." The war was entering a new phase, and both sides knew it. The Zephyrians were no longer fighting a simple conquest. They were fighting for their reputation, their authority, their entire way of life, and humanity was fighting for something even more powerful, their future as a free species in a galaxy full of predators. The aliens had wanted to teach humans about fear and submission. Instead, they were getting an education in human stubbornness, creativity, and the dangerous things that happened when you gave people nothing left to lose. Dr. Grant's hybrid warships were beginning to roll out of the factories. General Thompson's irregular tactics were being copied by resistance movements on conquered worlds. Admiral Webb's fleets were striking deeper into Zephyrian territory every week. The galaxy was learning that humanity was not just another species to be conquered. They were something new, something unprecedented, something that would change the... 2 years after the first encounter, the war between humanity and the Zephyrian collective had reached a breaking point. War Commander Thexal, now Supreme Fleet Commander of all Zephyrian forces, stood in the war room of the massive space fortress called the Iron Throne. Around him, holographic displays showed the grim reality of the situation. "Report," he ordered his staff officers, though he already knew what they would say. "Supreme Commander, we have lost control of 17 star systems. Human forces are operating behind our lines in over 40 sectors. Our supply situation is critical." The officer's voice carried the weight of defeat, though no Zephyrian would dare speak the word aloud. Thexal studied the tactical displays with growing desperation. The red areas showing Zephyrian control were shrinking every day, while the blue zones of human influence spread like a disease through space. What about the Kethvar sector? Last month we had 3 full battle fleets there. Destroyed, Supreme Commander. The humans used a new tactic. They broadcast surrender signals, then detonated their ships when our forces moved to capture them. We lost 37 vessels in a single engagement. This was the nightmare that had been growing worse. For 2 years, the humans fought like no civilized species should fight. They used tricks, lies, surprise attacks, and weapons that shouldn't exist. Worse, they seemed to learn from every defeat and come back stronger. "Sir, there is something else," said another officer nervously. "We are receiving reports of rebellion in the outer territories. Species that we conquered centuries ago are asking questions about why the collective cannot defeat these humans." Thexal felt cold fear in his core. The Zephyrian empire was built on the idea that they were invincible. If other species began to doubt that, everything would collapse. "Summon the High Council. It's time to use the final protocol." The final protocol was the Zephyrian ultimate weapon, a device that could destroy entire planets. It had been built centuries ago but never used, because the threat of it was enough to make any enemy surrender. 3 days later, the largest Zephyrian fleet ever assembled approached the Sol system. 500 ships, including the mighty fortress ship Worldbreaker, carrying the planet-killing weapon that had never failed to terrify enemies into submission. Their target was Earth itself, the human homeworld with 8 billion people living on its surface. Thexal was certain that threatening humanity's birthplace would finally break their spirit, but he didn't know that Admiral Webb had been expecting this moment for months. "All fleet commanders, this is Admiral Webb. Operation Last Stand is now active. Every ship, every weapon, every human in space. This is what we've been preparing for." Hidden throughout the Sol system, thousands of human vessels waited in ambush. Dr. Grant's hybrid ships, powered by captured alien technology but designed with human creativity. General Thompson's irregular forces, ready to use tactics that would horrify any civilized military. And something else, something the Zephyrians had never seen before. "Admiral, the alien fleet is entering scanner range," reported Captain Jake Morrison from his flagship, the New Horizon 3rd. 500 ships, just like intelligence predicted. "Good. Beth, are you ready with the psychological warfare package?" Beth Collins, now director of the Human Intelligence Service, activated her systems with a grim smile. Broadcasting now, Admiral. Every Zephyrian ship should be receiving our message. Across space, Zephyrian communication systems suddenly filled with intercepted recordings of their own commanders admitting defeat, their own soldiers expressing fear, their own people questioning why the war was taking so long. But the real surprise came when Thexal opened communication channels to deliver his ultimatum to Earth. Humans of Earth, this is Supreme Fleet Commander Thexal. You see before you the largest military force in galactic history. Surrender now, or watch your homeworld burn. President Rodriguez answered from Earth's Defense Command Center. Fleet Commander, this is Elena Rodriguez. I have a message for you from the people of Earth. The transmission that followed was unlike anything in Zephyrian experience. Instead of a government official begging for mercy, the screen showed ordinary humans from across Earth. Farmers, factory workers, teachers, children, all speaking. The same message in dozens of different languages. We don't surrender. The psychological impact on the Zephyrian fleet was immediate. These weren't soldiers talking. They were ordinary people who refused to be afraid of the greatest military power in the galaxy. Sir, what are your orders? Asked Thexal's second-in-command. Prepare the World Breaker. Target their largest city. But as the planet-killer weapon began to charge, something impossible happened. The human defense fleet didn't try to protect Earth by fighting the Zephyrian ships directly. Instead, they did something that violated every rule of civilized warfare. Commodore Jake Morrison led a task force of 50 ships on a direct course for the Zephyrian homeworld, located 300 light-years away. The ships were loaded with the same planet-killer technology the aliens were about to use, reverse-engineered from captured Zephyrian weapons. This is Morrison to the Zephyrian flagship. Your weapon is aimed at our home. Our weapon is now aimed at yours. You have 10 minutes to withdraw, or we detonate it. The transmission reached Thexal just as his planet-killer was ready to fire. For the first time in his life, he faced a choice between victory and the survival of his own people. They're bluffing, said his tactical officer. No civilized species would destroy an entire world. These aren't civilized, Thexal replied quietly. These are humans. He had been fighting them for 2 years. He had watched them ram ships into his fleets, watched them detonate their own vessels to cause damage, watched them fight with tactics. That hurt to think about. If they said they would destroy his homeworld, they meant it. Sir, our home system is reporting human ships approaching. They're broadcasting the same message. Surrender or watch your planet die. Thexal looked around his command center at officers who had never imagined they could face defeat. The collective had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years through superior force and the willingness to use it. Now they faced an enemy who had turned their own weapons against them. But the final blow came from an unexpected source. Dr. Lisa Grant had spent 2 years studying captured Zephyrian technology, and she had discovered something remarkable. The aliens' entire military network was controlled by quantum computers that shared information instantly across space. She had also learned how to hack them. Admiral Webb, this is Dr. Grant. I'm uploading a virus to every Zephyrian ship in the system. In 30 seconds, they're going to see something interesting on their screens. What the Zephyrians saw was their own history, but told from the perspective of the species they had conquered. Billions of beings who had surrendered when threatened, who had given up their freedom to save their lives, who had spent centuries as slaves to Zephyrian power. But they also saw something else. Recordings of human battles, human sacrifice, human determination to fight even when victory seemed impossible. They saw a species that would rather die than surrender, and they realized what that meant. Supreme Commander, said his communication officer in a voice barely above a whisper, we're receiving surrender requests from our own battle groups. Some of our captains are asking permission to withdraw. The impossible was happening. Zephyrian warriors who had never known defeat were looking at an enemy that scared them more than death. An enemy that had taken their ultimate weapon and pointed it back at them. Thexal made the hardest decision in Zephyrian history. All ships, stand down weapons, withdraw to minimum safe distance. Sir? His officers couldn't believe what they were hearing. The humans have taught us something we never learned in 3,000 years of conquest. There are some prices too high to pay, even for victory. The transmission went out to both fleets simultaneously. Human forces, this is Supreme Fleet Commander Thexal of the Zephyrian Collective. We propose immediate ceasefire and formal negotiations. President Rodriguez responded from Earth. We accept your proposal, Fleet Commander. But understand, we're not negotiating surrender. We're negotiating peace. The war that had started with an alien ultimatum ended with humanity offering mercy to their defeated enemies. Not because humans were weak, but because they were strong enough to choose compassion over revenge. 3 months later, Thexal stood in the United Nations building in New York, signing the Treaty of Seoul. The document ended the war and established humanity as a major galactic power, but it also did something unprecedented. It offered the defeated Zephyrians a chance to rebuild their empire based on cooperation, rather than conquest. Tell me something, Fleet Commander, said Dr. Grant during the reception after the signing. What would you have done if we had actually been bluffing about destroying your homeworld? Thexal looked at this small human female who had turned his own technology against him. Dr. Grant, after 2 years of fighting your species, I knew you weren't bluffing. Humans don't bluff. They just do things that seem impossible until they're done. The galaxy had learned the most important lesson in its history. Humanity was not just another species to be conquered or ignored. They were something new, a species that combined the technology to destroy worlds with the wisdom to choose not to use it. The Zephyrians had challenged Hugh